the Pan-African healthcare class with Nana Akua. Then after the Pan-African healthcare class, we're going to have the Pan-African history class with Dr. Rita Win. So stay tuned. We are going to start with our first country speaker, Pride Mozi from Zimbabwe. Yes, Pride, can you hear me? You can unmute yourself. Yes, Pride Mozi. You can unmute yourself. Yes, I think he's having some issues with network. We can have Reite Feliciado from Mozambique. Yes, brother Leite, can you hear us? You can unmute yourself.
Hello, good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon. Yes, brother, you can help us with a prayer in your local language, then you continue with your report.
Come again?
You can help us with a prayer in your local language, then you continue with your report.
Oh, honestly,
Okay.
I don't know how to pray in my mother language.
Okay, let me pray. Let's pray. Uwiteka Mana nziza, twongeye kuza imbere y'ubwiza bwawe, turakwinginze ngo ku munsi wa natwe, komeze turinde mu byo turi gukora byose, igihe n'umugisha, komeze turinde imiryango turavana n'ahantu hatandukanye, dusabye twiyambaje mu izina rya Yesu Kristo, amen.
Amen.
Yes, I just prayed
I thank you.
Language from Kinyarwanda. So
I thank you.
you're welcome. Yes, you have 4 minutes to present your report.
Thank you. Can I try to share something?
You can share your video, not the screen.
Not video, but the PowerPoint presentation?
Okay, you can share it. Okay, you can share it right now.
Thank you. Okay. Can you see?
Yes, we can see it.
Thank you very much to have the opportunity to share a bit about my country, Mozambique. I would say that it is a privilege to have all the participants in this platform and get to know a piece of Mozambique. I would like to start by recognizing that this kind of platform is critical and critically important because it strengthens us as Africans. That's why I borrowed the quote from Kwame Nkrumah, who say, "I'm not African because I was born in Africa, but because Africa was born in me." This quote has a sense of profound sentiment about our connection to Africa. So being African is not just the fact that we are associated with the continent, but it's more profound than that. So there are many issues that we need to take into consideration. So I thought this was a very important quote to start with, to stress the fact that being African is not just because we are born in Africa, but it's more than that. And I would like to share a bit of our country profile. because I am aware that we are many people in the platform and possibly different from people from different parts of the world. So if you can see the African map, there is a country on the eastern coast of Africa in green, and I have written Mozambique. This is how it looks in the map. So we are in a country in southeast coast of Africa, and we have borders with Tanzania, Malawi, and Zambia, Zimbabwe in the west, South Africa in the south and southwest. To the east, we have long coast of the Indian Ocean. As the statistics of 2021 was presented to the Mozambican population, we are now around 30,832 inhabitants, 244. And this is a population which is growing a bit faster. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Thank you. This is a multilingual country, and as a result, it's a multicultural country because each ethnicity has its peculiar characteristics in terms of cultural practices. So it's a multilingual and a multicultural country, and this is typical of African country. So we have about 22 Bantu languages spoken in the country. So in addition to that, we have Mozambican Sign Language. The Portuguese is the official language because the country had been the colony of Portugal. We learn in the school context as foreign languages, English and French. But in addition to that, we have some Asiatic languages. Because we have a great deal of Indian community and different people coming from Goa, Pakistan, and many other Asian countries. So our country became independent from colonial domination, which was Portuguese, in 25 June 1975. And from there, we adopted the Portuguese as our official language. Unfortunately, it's the only language which operates in the formal context because the colonial rule was based on the ideology of linguistic assimilation, and only Portuguese was promoted in the colonial time. And after independence, it became a little bit difficult to promote a Bantu language as official language. So we selected this. So I must have mentioned that there are many languages spoken in the country, and there are around 20 or more than 20 languages are spoken, so of Bantu family. That's why I said we are a multi-ethnic and multicultural country. So it is a democratic country. We used to be a single party state until the Civil War ended. And one of the Civil War ended in 1992 with the signing of the peace agreement in 1992. And we had our very first elections, democratic election, in 1994.
Yes, you only have 30 seconds left.
Okay, thank you. So this is a very beautiful country with a lot, peculiar architecture. So I have some pictures of most interesting places to visit. They are historical places to visit. The first picture on top left is a Roman Catholic church, the oldest building in the city. So on the right, top right, we have Maputo railway station. You have also Maputo's forts, Independence Square. You can see the statue of our first president, Samora Moses Machel, but the architecture of also the Roman Catholic Cathedral in Maputo is very peculiar in terms of its architecture. So those who are willing to visit, they should visit this country. In terms of economy, basically agricultural, and there is a forestry, fishing, mining sector, which with excuse me?
Yes, thank you. Your time is out.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you very much for your report. Maybe we can continue next week with the rest of the PowerPoints.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you very much. I am
Thank you
because
very much.
yes, up next we're going to have our brother Edwin Chamba from Tanzania. Edwin Chamba, can you hear us?
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, you have 4 minutes to present your report.
Thank you so much. Greetings to everyone. My name is Edwin Chamba, as my sister said. I'm an ambassador from Tanzania. I greet you everyone from every part of Africa and diaspora. I thank you for joining this movement and being there for the sake of this movement and its development. Thank you so much. Today, I'll be presenting my report about my group in Tanzania, about all the activities happened in my group during all this week. That is all I'll be presenting. Yeah, on Sunday, the 2nd April, we were required to join I Love Black People Radio, hosted by co-founder Sinclair Skinner, with Dr. Abe Kudara, who is a doctor of internal medicine, and they were discussing about COVID-19 and Cuban vaccine. It is there where we found how the Cuban created their vaccine against COVID-19 and how they used it in protecting their people against the COVID-19 disease. Another activities was announcement to show up to all on their Palm Sunday, and everyone accepted it and showing love about it. Another was an announcement on joining the Pan-African Call, Pan-African Saturday Call. Another activities was a call for those interested in presenting their country, representing their country as country speakers. The announcement was put there for everyone who is interested to represent his country as a country speaker, was required to submit his name and the report to the moderator. Another activity was another call to join our Saturday call as listeners and presenters, so that we know what's going on in our movement. Another activities was a call for those interested in presenting their country as speakers, as I'm doing today. Another activity was Kwibuka 29, which was the meaning on how we can stand with the Rwandan to commemorate the 1994 genocide against the Tutsi, and the paying up to 1 million people who were murdered in during those days on 100 days. What we are required to do is to remember, unite, and renew the new Rwanda. Another activity was to join the Saturday Pan-African Call, as I'm doing today, and everyone who saw the announcement tried to join and joined as presenter or a listener. After that, that was our activities for the groups, and we were insisting about other people to invite other people so that the movement can get more people, can invite more people so that we get more power. You know, people's are power. We get more power on how to push this movement to the goal that we have created or goals that have been set by our co-founders and other people. Thank you so much, my sister Dime. I hope that my time is out.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. I am because you are.
I am because
Thank
you
you
are.
so much.
Yes,
Thank
thank you very much, Brother Edwin Chamba from Tanzania. Thank you for a wonderful report of what happened during the course of the week in the Tanzanian group. Up next, we are going to have our brother Nuni from Cameroon. Shadrach Nuni, you can unmute yourself. Yes, welcome. You have
Good afternoon.
to present your report.
Thank you. Yeah, I will present my report based on the geographical aspect of my country, which is Cameroon. As everybody knows, which Cameroon is bilingual. It's a bilingual country with both English and French, which was colonized in the late 20s with French and British. That is having its two stories. So the greater part of Cameroon is being colonized. That we have 10 regions. 8 regions is made up of the Francophone zone, while the other 2 regions make up the Anglophone. So geographically speaking, Cameroon covers 4,700 kilometers square with 308 different languages, with 2 official languages, English and French. Politically speaking, Cameroon has had only 2 presidents. And actually, I can say our actual president is one of the oldest in Africa. Everybody knows him. So those are some statistics that we have in Cameroon. And some of the challenges that we also have in Cameroon, we have crisis we have some economic crisis and political crisis. So we do with that concerning, because we also have some problem of tribalism and what they call favoritism. So at times that all lead to corruption. So that is some of the things that we do face in Cameroon. But notwithstanding, Cameroon government has put in place some agents to stop corruption. So those are the little things that we all face in Cameroon. So with the idea of I love black people, with the promotion of I am because we are, I think that with the upcoming years or days, Cameroon will be proud to share the spirit of Pan-Africanism amongst its brothers, friends, or children, even why not neighborhood. So those are the things that we all want Africa to have in common. That is the spirit of communalism, especially in the Pan-Africanism way. That is, we love our brothers. With the
30 seconds to finish up.
I'll end up with a slogan that I am because we are, since we are, therefore we are. So thank you very much for passing me the floor.
Yes, thank you very much, Shadrach. I am because we are. Up next, we are going to have our brother Seisai Hassan. Yes, from the Gambia. Hassan Seisai, can you unmute yourself?
Good afternoon to you all.
Yes, you have 4 minutes to present your report. Yes, good afternoon.
All right, no problem. Thank you. Thank you for giving me the floor. As you rightly mentioned, my name is Hassan from the Gambia. Just want to talk about a little bit of my country, that is Gambia. Are you guys hearing me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah. I'm from a country called the Gambia, which is a small country situated in West Africa. which is bounded by Senegal with all the three sides except the Atlantic Ocean. It has a narrow Atlantic coastline. It is known for its diverse ecosystem around the central Gambia River. Abundant wildlife in We have abundant wildlife. We have many parks. We have the Ken West National Park, the Barbolong Wetland Reserve, and we have other reserves including monkey, leopards, hippos, hyenas, and rare birds. Our capital is Banjul, and nearby is Seneca, which offers access to the beach. We have our currency with the Gambian Dalasi. Official language is English. Our population is estimated 2.6 million, that is in 2021. In our country, you have many regions. Most of them, the origin is Muslim and Christianity. Approximately 95.7% of the population is Muslim, most of whom are Sunni, with a small Ahmadiyya Muslim population. And the other second region, which is Christianity, we make up 4.2% of the population. The majority of them are the Roman Catholics. The Gambia was part of the British West African colony from 1821 to 1843. It was a separate colony with its own governor until 1866, when control was returned to the Governor General at Freetown, Rio. It would remain until 1889. So Gambia got its independence in 1965, that is 18 February 1965. The day is celebrated on 18 to mark the anniversary of the Gambian liberation from the British Empire. After liberation from the British Empire, after centuries of colonization and exploitation, the Gambia finally get its right to self-govern itself, that is 18 February. As I said, the language, English is the official language, but the most regular speaking language or spoken language generally that is our native language, that is the Mandinka language, Wolof, which is the one can say the lingua state, and we have other language as such as Fulbe, there is Pulo, Terahule, Soninke, etc., etc. If we say Gambia, what is Gambia known for? Some of us call it the smiling coast of Africa. Gambia has an ecosystem, or the economy is heavily dependent on peanuts, that is groundnut, production and export. The country is known for the beaches along its small Atlantic coastline and for being the home to Jufre, that is
You have 30 seconds to finish up your report.
Let me summarize. That is the home to the Kunta Kinte, the main character in the well-known novel of Code the Roots. The Gambia is popular with tourists, the super climate-friendly local people, and the quiet beach resorts and diverse wildlife are just some of the tips of the iceberg when it comes to the reason behind holidays to the Gambia. I hope with some of these things you guys know more about the Gambia, a small country situated in West Africa, normally called the smiling coast of Africa. Thank you all.
Yes, thank you, Asante Sai from the Gambia. I am because we are. Thank you for the report. Yes, up next, we are going to have our sister, Natalia Faith. Yes, Natalia Faith from Namibia. Can you hear us? You can unmute yourself.
Yes, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Yes, you
Okay.
have to present your report.
Right. Let me try my best. Please bear with my voice. First of all, I would like to greet all the founders, co-founders, ambassadors, and everyone on Pan Africa Zoom today. So for today, we are reporting, presenting Namibian history, culture, and current affairs. Namibia is located in Southern Africa. Is a rich country in cultures, and in history. The nation has a diverse population with various ethnic groups and languages, all contributing to the unique Namibian identity. The history of Namibia is marked by colonialism and apartheid and struggle for independence. While the current affairs revolve around economic growth, social development, and conservation of natural resources. Quickly get to the culture. Namibia culture is a diverse and influenced by the various ethnic groups such as the Himbas, Herero, Damara, Sans, and Nama. The group has distinct language, traditional dress, and ways of life. Yet they share a common bonds of community and respect for the environment. The Ovahimba people, for example, are known for their intricate hairstyle and use of the ochre to protect their skin from the harsh desert sun, because Namibia is very hot. While the Herero people are known for their colorful Victorian style dresses, traditional music, dance, storytelling, and also significant aspects of Namibian culture. If we just quickly get to the history, Namibian history. Namibian history is marked by colonialism, apartheid, and struggle for independence. The German Empire is colonized in the late of 18,000, I don't know, and ruled the country until the end of the war, until the end of the First World War, when Southern Africa took control under the League of Nations mandate. The apartheid regime in South Africa extended to Namibia, leading to a long and brutal struggle for independence. In 1990, Namibia became an independent nation with Sam Nujoma as the first president of Namibia. Current affairs. Namibia current affairs revolve around economic growth, social development, conservation of natural resources. The nation has made significant strides in recent years with economic growth average around 5% per year. Namibia has also been successful in reducing poverty and improving access to education and health care. The country is also known for its conservation effort, with nearly 20% of its land designated and protected areas. However, challenges remain, including higher level of income and inequality and youth unemployment. In conclusion, Namibia culture's history and current affairs make it fascinating country to explore a diverse population, rich traditions, and struggle for independence provide a unique perspective of African history, while its current focus on economic growth and conservation highlights the importance of sustainable development in the 21st century. Namibia is a country worth of discovering, with much to offer to those interested in culture, history, and social development. At the end, I would love to encourage everyone to download I Love Black People app. It is the report reported by Natalia from Namibia. I am because we are.
Yes, thank you very much, Sister Natalia from Namibia. I am because you are. Thank you for the report. Yes, up next we're going to have our Sister Monica from Zimbabwe. Yes, can you unmute yourself? Yes, Monica Gotanzila. Can you hear us? Can unmute yourself. Yes, I think our sister has some issues with her network. Yes, we are going to shift to Pan-African healthcare class with Nana Akur. So if you would like to receive a shout out from her, you can turn your camera on. We all know that she likes watching the black, beautiful faces. Yes, welcome, Dr. Ryan. Sorry, Nana Akua.
I call you back. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Hello, everyone. So, wait. Oh, can you hear me? Oh.
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. You were muted. Like I can't hear you. Okay. So, hey there, Curtis Murphy, and I see Shahid and Edwin and Malusi, and is that Natalia? That's Lewis's phone, but I don't think that's Lewis. Is that Natalia? And Shadrach. Are there any other? I don't think there are any other cameras on, but greetings, everyone. So today we are talking about superfoods and essential oils. We spoke a little bit about herbs last week, and I decided I was not going to deal with any handouts today. So I'm doing sort of a show and tell type of thing. It was easier to gather my essential oils than it was my crystals. I always talk about having my crystals, which I love. I collect crystals, right? There's so many. I can't come and bring them in front of the camera, right? However, I am able, of my boxes that I put my essential oils in. Not that this is easy to hold up and show around, right? But this is called showing off. I am gonna show off a little bit. I'm a bit of the different essential oils I have. This nice little chest here, I'm sure it was made in India somewhere. But but it has all of these nice compartments and such to hold all of my many. Somebody want to call as soon as I get online, sorry. But of course, this is just one case. I have another case, and then another box, but I didn't feel it necessary to bring all of those. But I wanted to kind of highlight the uses of essential oils. And if you're not familiar with kind of how they come or how they're sold, just wanted to kind of show generally essential oils. And we know essential oils are extracted oils from the flowering, usually the flowering parts of plants. However, if you're in the WhatsApp group, I had recorded a audio message. I hope somebody got to listen to that. But you know, it can really, I think it's about 3 minutes, 3 or 4 minutes, but it is a little short description of essential oils and its uses. Usually it's the flowering parts of a plant, but it could be the leaves, stems, bark, root of different flowers, plants, trees, shrubs that they will extract the oil from. And usually you will find it in a dropper bottle, right? So usually they'll come in either like a 10 milliliter or 1 or 2 bottles. And usually it will have a dropper top, right? And so the point is you need very little, right, at a time. Its uses. So they're all different types. So I wanted to kind of highlight a few of them. We know that we might use them in oils or ointments or salves where you're making a cream or ointment for the skin, and after using or making that preparation, you're adding drops of essential oils to your creams or salves or ointments. One of my favorite ways is I will add it to, this is alcohol, but you can also do water, and you may add all throughout the beginning of the pandemic and still, I use this brand is called Thieves, but this brand became popular, or this combination of essential oils became popular from a particular company called Young Living, and they called it Five Thieves. But this is a really good combination of essential oils that are good for cleansing and detoxifying your environment, your area, things like that. So it has a combination of oils in it, like cinnamon leaf, I know clove is in here, and I can't read this little bit of writing. Rosemary, clove, eucalyptus, and I want to say tea tree is in here. Oh, and lemon oil, right? And so this I use as my antibiotic, hand sanitizer. I may simply just spray the area if I feel like I want to freshen up the area. If I feel like there's an odor or something around, I'll use this. And this is just a little dropper bottle, a spray bottle that I get from the dollar store or any of your little store, Walmart, things of that nature. Also, just more so for like spiritual cleansing, we can also use essential oils in terms of little spray bottles. This one has a crystal. Hey, I found a way to incorporate these crystals I was just talking about, right? So this is a clear quartz crystal, and I just put water and then whichever essential oil I may use, frankincense, myrrh, cinnamon, any number of oils that I may be using, depending on what I'm trying to do, I may just add into this bottle, and I may use it as a personal spray mister. Or if I know I've gone into an area, you've ever been in one of those situations where you're around some people that have some bad or negative energy, or you go into a place and your mood drops, or you feel physically or emotionally or spiritually some kind of decrease or imbalance that comes about. That's because we are perhaps amongst somebody that's kind of off a little, and they have a tendency to be able to throw us off. So I carry around stuff like this to kind of just clear the energy for me, to protect myself, to cleanse myself of anything negative or bad that may have tried to attach itself to me. So this is another way that I use essential oils. We know that in terms of skin creams or oils, I'll say, you can easily add to your apricot oil or your almond oil or your coconut oil, whatever oils you may be using on your skin. You can always add a few drops of essential oils to that, not only for the aroma or fragrance, but also you have many that, of course, will help heal the skin. Some will address dry skin. Some will address cuts or burns or things of that nature. So there are many ways to use it. And I always have mentioned my peppermint. So, I had to pull my little peppermint out here, right? If you've listened to me before, you know that peppermint is one of my favorites. But let's go over what some of the essential oils do. So, neroli, we have neroli here. But I guess I don't need to find it because you don't necessarily need to see the bottle of neroli, but if I could have gotten my hands on it quickly, I would have. But neroli is an oil. Again, it'll come in a bottle, just like what I'm showing today. We know that this has antidepressant, antiseptic, antispasmodic, and aphrodisiac properties. So it's good for aging skin, meaning it'll help reduce the signs of aging skin. It's good for scars, stress. It's also good for lack of sexual desire. That's the aphrodisiac part. It can help with balancing your hormones for women. It's good for depression, stress, anxiety, restlessness, lack of concentration. And neroli is also good for helping to lower blood pressure. And of course, that's probably because, right, of the antidepressant properties. So of course, people who have hypertension that's sort of stress induced, or because of having a hectic lifestyle, neroli can be really helpful in that regard. Orange, I think, is another popular oil. A lot of these citrus, orange, tangerine, grapefruit, they have similar properties, but each will also do something different. Bergamot is another one that's also in the orange or the citrus family. So we know that orange essential oil has anti-inflammatory, antidepressant, antispasmodic, antiseptic, aphrodisiac, and diuretic properties, right? So I always like the citrus oils. This is another one that I would put in a spray bottle, or I forgot to show you my little diffuser. Oils is diffuser. This is a situation where in this, right, and put your 10 drops of essential oils in, and you turn it on. This one has a USB cord because I can use it on my computer or my laptop. And it creates a nice little mist of aroma, and it helps cheer up your mood or cleanse the air, purify the air, or whatever, depending on what essential oil it is. That's one of the main reasons or ways that I use the citrus oils, because I love to use something like lemon or grapefruit or orange to just sort of lift the mood. It's good for opening up the nasal passages and just creating sort of a sunny disposition, I always say, right? And so the citrus oils I always will use for that, but know that they have other benefits as well. I just picked up so oregano oil. Now, this is a very strong oil, very strong oil. This is good for its antiseptic properties, its analgesic properties, antispasmodic, anti-stimulant. Now, talk about analgesic. Now, stuff will straight you for if you mess around and it's on your mouth, lip, tongue, feel whatever issue on, it's definitely going to numb your whole mouth. So B is often used for like respiratory disorders, among other things. It's good for cough, asthma, sore throat, congestion, sinusitis, bronchitis, things of that nature. But it's also good for candida, athlete's foot, ringworm, parasites, any fungal or parasitic conditions. Oregano or oil of oregano is excellent for. It's good for food poisoning, helps with the side effects of chemotherapy, good for earaches, digestive issues. Really, really powerful oil, but it's very strong, right? Another one that I will mention is patchouli. A lot of people use patchouli just because they like the fragrance, the aroma of patchouli. However, patchouli has a lot of healing properties, right? So if you like that kind of woody, earthy smell, that's just an added benefit. But patchouli is astringent, diuretic, sedative, antidepressant, antiseptic, aphrodisiac, and anti-inflammatory. So it's good for premature aging skin, loss of skin tone and tightness or elasticity. It's good for skin dryness, skin infections, wounds. It's good for low self-esteem, stress, depression, nervousness, right? Back to some more skin issues. It's good for forms of dermatitis like eczema. It's good for scars. And also even some, because it has anti-inflammatory properties, it's good for gout. Also good for athlete's foot and lack of libido. So in addition to that aroma, or, we think people just trying to smell good, they might just be trying to increase their libido. So it might be some other things. And as they should, because whatever benefits you can get from these plants, from these oils, that is what they are here for. And if we can do it and smell good while doing it, all the better. I have made herbal products for a long time, and I've told this story recently. I've made pretty much every product you can think of: shampoo, hair oil, hair and scalp food, all kinds of herbal formulas in capsule form and tea form or what have you, right? And so I used to make this hair oil, And of course, for me, it was more about what healing properties the herbs and the essential oils had in them. So clary sage, let me see, I have some more clary sage. So clary sage is, and of course I know I can just talk off the cuff, but I like to read what they say. So clary sage is good for focusing. It's a stimulating, warming, balancing essential oil, and is excellent for meditation, connecting to spirit, opens the third eye and crown chakras, right? So I thought, hey, what better essential oil to add to a hair oil, because it's right in the location that it needs to be to help do its work. And but you know, you get into people, I had a hair salon that used to order, but they were more so interested in the smell of the hair oil, not necessarily the healing properties. So that became a challenge for me, always having to figure, okay, does it smell like how they want? Because you know, most people want fruity, flowery, floral, you know, kinds of scents. And that's just not typically what I focused on. I typically am trying to find the best combination of healing properties in these different essential oils that I would use for my products. So, so yeah, good luck with that, because not everyone is into that. I'd like to mention frankincense along the lines of patchouli. We know that frankincense, that, ooh, I love to smell a man with some frankincense or myrrh on it. But don't get it twisted, I will wear frankincense and myrrh myself. It's usually considered a more masculine scent, right? But I just love the aroma of them separately or together, right? But we know that in addition to the aroma, again, we know that frankincense is excellent for its different healing properties as well. So we know that it is relaxing and focusing and centering. Often, as most people know and use it with, we know that it's often combined with myrrh, but it also mixes well with orange that I've mentioned earlier, also mixes well with sandalwood. And we know that for a lot of spiritual rituals and ceremonies, frankincense and myrrh is often used. We know that it elevates the vibration and it's uplifting and spiritually healing and cleansing. And it just smells so good. We also know that it has some skin healing properties as well. And so, again, if you're using something and it smells good, great, but it's also good to recognize if it has healing properties. And I think it's worth mentioning myrrh. And I know I have myrrh in here as well. But since I mentioned myrrh, we know that myrrh is for focusing, for centering, and it's meditative. Most people will say that's more for the grounding. If you're sort of all over the place and you have some things going on and you kind of need to ground yourself, that's good. And of course, they just happen to work really good together. I've mentioned cinnamon as being my favorite. I didn't mention what it does. But we know that it has a warming effect, it's comforting, it's energizing. Frankincense, myrrh, and cinnamon together are divine. If I have the rock incense of the actual frankincense and myrrh, and then I put a few drops of the cinnamon oil on top, or if I have some cinnamon bark pieces, I will burn all of those together on a incense charcoal. Really, really divine. So we know that it mixes well with certain things. Most people, if they're using the cinnamon bark itself, they are mixing it with clove or nutmeg or ginger or vanilla. So these are all, as you know, very warming, very stimulating, refreshing, cleansing aromas as well. So I just wanted to, and there's so many essential oils. I would not have time to go through all of them, but those are some of my favorites. Most people are familiar with lavender. We know that it is calming and soothing, and we know that people will use it if they're wanting to settle themselves down from a long, stressful day. So it's good for promoting rest or sleep, but it's also good if you are trying to meditate, if you're trying to attract or balance your spirit, because it has that calming meditative effect. But we also know that lavender is good topically for any kind of skin issues because it's healing and soothing. So a lot of times people are using it topically for burns, whether it's actual burns from the sun or burns from fire, because of its healing, soothing effect. So it's not just something that smells good and you can put in, you know, your creams or your ointments or your oils just for the smell. It has a lot of healing benefits as well. Yeah, so it's soothing, it's good for dry skin, acne, balancing, relaxing. Yeah, compresses. I didn't mention compresses. I was also telling this story recently. When my children would have fevers, right? Ginger essential oil was, and I didn't bring that, but I have a big bottle of that. This is not ginger, but I usually will get that in a bigger bottle as well because I use ginger quite a bit. But whenever, even as a baby, even as infants and toddlers, whenever my children would have fevers, I would make a compress with the ginger oil in it. And that's as simple as getting a bowl or basin of water, putting in a few drops, and a good quality ginger essential oil is going to be very strong. And I just remember my younger daughter always really hated, you know, she would just frown up so bad, even as a toddler. She would just be like, you know, like as if she could fight off, you know, the aroma because it's just a strong smell, but it's so good for elevated temperatures, such as fevers. So on an infant or a toddler, a compress is going to be easier to administer. Or I would have a little bowl, same thing, water and drops of the essential oil, and I would just hold their feet in the water, right? And do sort of a ginger foot bath or foot soak so that the ginger could permeate into their bodies and help to regulate the temperature in the body. So there's so many uses for essential oils. Or of course, a full body bath, you know, is also a good idea. But essential oils, I love them. I think that they are so beneficial for our healing. And this is how, I guess I'm not so much into it now, but this is how much I've been into it. I have all these little cases. This is a little case that you put your essential oils into, right? So that you can transport them, right? And it has these little thingies. Some people are so creative, that's not me, but some people are so creative because each of these little sleeves, you can put your bottles of essential oils in and carry them around with you if you're traveling or if you're going someplace and you need to carry your favorite 6 or 10 or 12 essential oils. So I think that is what I have for the essential oils. But the uses are countless. I was someplace and someone had cut their hand and I had some of the thieves, the oil here that has the rosemary and clove and cinnamon and lemon and tea tree oils in it, right? And I literally used that on the cut as a disinfectant, right? As an antiseptic. So after wiping it off, I put the essential oil on and wrapped it in a bandage for the cut. So, and that's just me. Most people are not going to do all that, right? But that's just me because I will always have in my car or my purse, right? Some small little bottle like this that I've transferred my essential oils into so that I can carry just in case it's needed for someone or for myself or for my children. So let's transition into talking about superfoods. So we know that foods that are highly nutritive foods, right, that contain a number of vitamins and minerals. We call those superfoods. I usually just talk about it in terms of foods, but I think I'm going to make my own list of super herbs, because I always highlight that in my traditional herbalism class that I teach, that there are herbs that also are so highly nutritive that you would have to call them super herbs. So these are not just your ordinary herbs. Most herbs, thank God, have so many healing properties, right? We know that they contain different vitamins, minerals, and amino acids, you know, what have you. We will always have multiple benefits, but we have some that are more nutritive than others, right? So these are like catnip, alfalfa, red raspberry. These are some of the top herbs that I would consider super herbs in terms of just having so many vitamins and minerals that you would have to say, oh, wow, okay, this is extraordinary. This is something you would add to your arsenal to protect yourself. So if you're not able to do a vitamin or mineral supplement, right? If you know that you drink teas or you like herbal teas, we would choose certain herbal teas to get our nutrients. So even if we know we're not having the best diet, these are, and that's the purpose of these superfoods as well. So even if you are working on improving your diet, there are certain foods that you can add to it to get as many nutrients in it as possible. So one of those such foods is almonds. And, you know, as a person that's been into this at least 25 years, now they don't so much talk about this when they say, you know, make a smoothie and throw this, you know, these almonds and these leaves of spinach and all this stuff in there. But generally, almonds have an enzymatic barrier on it. The skin on it, the best way to really eat almonds is to have soaked them. And overnight is great, but even if it's at least 4 to 6 hours, you really want to soak your almonds, most nuts, but I think almonds is one of those that you really kind of have to do something with it to really get the full nutrition from it. But almonds are considered a superfood because of all of the calcium that is contained within it. Reports say that it's one of the, you know, most calcium-rich nuts. And if you add more to your diet, you'll greatly increase your calcium. It has high levels of vitamin E in it. It's a good source of protein. So almonds is going to be probably one of the best nuts to add to your diet. You also can add flax seeds. Flax is a seed of a flowering plant that comes or originates from the Mediterranean. And so usually you'll find it either ground up or either in the seed form itself, the whole seed form, ground up seeds, or what they call flaxseed meal. Or of course in an oil. And of course you want that to be a cold pressed oil. But flax seeds are excellent because they have a lot of nutrients like vitamin B6, minerals like copper, phosphorus, magnesium. They have dietary fiber, they have manganese. A lot of people, it has high levels of omega-3 fatty acids that we need, essential fats. So it's good for diabetes, cancer, heart disease, inflammation. Some studies show that it helps prevent breast cancer. So we know that it's a highly nutritive food that should be added. You can take it by the spoonful by itself, or you can add it to smoothies or drinks or shakes or what have you. Blueberries is another superfood. This has a lot of phytonutrients, vitamin C, and fiber. So this really helps with any kind of chronic disease. Most people, well, we use a lot of blueberries here, right, in the States. Blueberry pancakes, blueberry muffins. I like blueberry biscuits myself, but also we know that blueberries people will add into their shakes or smoothies, but these are going to be highly nutritive berries. Cinnamon, as I've talked about in the essential oil form, now the actual cinnamon, right? Ground cinnamon is usually how you're going to find it, or again, cinnamon sticks. But cinnamon is very good in terms of its healing properties. We know that it suppresses and fights urinary tract infections. It's soothing to the stomach. It improves brain function, lowers your bad cholesterol or your LDLs. And we know that it promotes a healthy glucose metabolism. So a lot of diabetics or people who have trouble balancing their blood sugar, we know that cinnamon is usually added into their diets. It also has effects on protecting people from Alzheimer's, cancer. It decreases inflammation, prevents stroke, prevents birth defects. So cinnamon, you know, I love the smell. I love it in the essential oil form, but if we can add more of it to our diets, we'll also be winning. Avocados, we know that this gives us a source of healthy fats into the body. So adding this will give you a good dose of the good fats, the mono unsaturated fats, right? So we know that fats, as we talked about in, I think, week 2, we talked about fats being an essential nutrient, but we have to choose the right ones, not trans fats, but monounsaturated fats. Avocado is an excellent source of that. Wheatgrass is another food or plant that is highly nutritive. People will usually juice the wheatgrass and take what they call wheatgrass shots. But this is full of iron, calcium, magnesium, amino acids, and vitamins A, C, and E. And then salmon, back to good fats or oils. Salmon is a good source of protein that is full of the omega-3 fatty acids. So this is also good to add to the diet. And then the last one from this list is sweet potatoes. So we know that they are packed with nutrition. This is still a root vegetable, so it will still possibly elevate your blood sugar, right? Because all root vegetables do, but this is going to be a healthier choice than your regular white potato or baking potato or russet potato. So sweet potatoes are packed with beta carotene, vitamin B6, vitamin C, fiber, and potassium. So we know that this has been used to really help with slowing down the aging process, reducing the risk for certain types of cancers. And as already stated, the vitamin A and beta carotene is the vegetable part of vitamin A, or vegetable source of vitamin A. Now, there are, and I don't know why I'm losing my voice, but we know there are also other foods that are more so considered seeds or powders or fruits that are usually found in its dried forms. So I'll mention a few of those today. These are not usually foods that we're going to add in their whole form, but we're going to usually have a dried berry or a powder or a seed that most people are adding to their salads or dressings or hot cereals. So your millet or your wheat or your porridge or your oatmeal or cream of wheat. These are types of foods that you can easily add to those. And that's things like maca powder. This is done, this is called, considered an adaptogen, which means it can do any damage from stress or fatigue or illness in the body when the body has been broken down, and then repair is needed, right? Or regeneration is needed. Maca powder. People also use maca powder for other things, sort of as a tonic or a rejuvenation type of herb. Sometimes it's used in female or male tonics, but this is something you can add as highly nutritive. Chia seeds is another one. We know that chia seeds, these are good sources of omega-3 fatty acids, fiber, and calcium. We know that seaweed is a sea vegetable, so we know that it's full of minerals. Most people will eat the dried pieces of seaweed, but you can also get it already broken down, or I think they call them in flakes, not so much powder, but flakes of Seaweed, we know, will have a lot of minerals in it: calcium, magnesium, iron, potassium, iodine, zinc. So if you are mineral deficient, seaweed is going to be a great snack. Again, usually I don't like it by itself. I have a good sister friend that buys the little packs of these little dried seaweed pieces. Me, I'll kind of break them up and put them into like a noodle or a soup or something like that. Acai berries. This has become very popular in the last probably 10 years. So we know that acai berries are great antioxidants. They are anti-aging. They assist in weight loss. Here in the States, we have whole juice bars and smoothie bars that build their whole entire menu around the acai berry. They have these, what they call them, fruit bowls, I guess. So it's sort of like a pureed mixture of the acai berries as the base, right? And then they add these different coconut pieces and walnuts or almonds or berries or bananas and things like that. And they eat that as a meal. But so it's become a little faddish, right? It's a fad, it's a growing thing. However, the acai is a good superfood that is packed with different nutrients. So, you know, there's a little bit of marketing in there, but at least it is a food that's good for you. And I said all that to say, because of course it's highly overpriced, but it's good for you. But you would do better trying to make it yourself rather than paying like $15 for a little acai bowl. Goji berries is another one. We know this comes from China. This is considered one of the Chinese medications, herbal medicines. Know that it improves circulation, boosts the immune system, and it's considered sort of a supportive tonic that kind of boosts the immune system, just sort of builds up the body. So has antioxidants. Usually you will get it in powder form or in a drink. And again, you can add it to your smoothies or salads, soups, things of that nature. And then cacao or cocoa powder. So like chocolate, cacao is a flavonoid. It helps lower blood pressure, improves blood flow. So then it'll help the brain and the heart. So we know that these things are excellent for that. And so my apologies, I am over time, but yes, that was the last one. That's the list of superfoods. And if you didn't get the handout, feel free to email me and I can send that to you. And I'll see you back here next week. And I bid you good health and peace.
Yes, thank you very much, Nana Akua. Those who would like to receive your handouts, I shared your email in the comment section. They can reach out to you. Yes, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your weekend. Up next, we're going to have the Pan-African. Please welcome. Yes, the Pan-African Historical with Dr. Wright Tyreen. Dr. Wright, can you hear us?
Yes, I'm here. How are you? Can you hear me? Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. All right. Okay, good. Okay, so welcome everyone. Thank you for committing your time to be here. So I'm just going to jump right in. You should have measured which read it. It's one of the few pieces of legislation that we can directly see where the U.S. government attempted to criminalize Blackness through immigration legislation. Okay, so it actually, it is a established piece of legislation that originated in the Senate and was defeated in the Congress. And as you can see in the case, it was defeated due to the efforts of none other than Booker T. Washington, his Tuskegee machine, and his propagandizing in the Black press. But really through the Tuskegee machine and his efforts to eradicate the piece of legislation through what people would see as unconventional means, because how many of us have a secret network to address racist US policies when they come up and before the Congress. So for those of you, hopefully you all have read it. So the point is to be speaking to an informed audience as we go through this course. You know, you are doing the readings and you are, you know, able to consume the lectures and get the important points out of it. But let me get right into it. So the case is called the African Exclusion Measure. It was posted in our WhatsApp group, and I'm gonna just a few details from it, you know, and this will be very quick, our session this time, because I'm gonna stay on schedule, right? We started, I'm a few minutes behind. So hold on 1 second, I'm coming to, so this is the case. You guys know it comes from the book, but you are not required to buy the book. It was actually posted in the WhatsApp group. I'm just sort of like bending the book so you can see the case. So this is the case that we're reading. It's called the African Exclusion Measure. And it starts out, the chapter starts out with telling you, sharing a quote from Booker T. Washington that he puts in the Black press. The African exclusion. So through your newspaper, I desire to appeal to the American Congress and to the people of the United States in favor of fair play and justice in connection with the immigration bill now pending before the United States Senate, which by amendment excludes from coming into this country any person of African descent. And so quite simply, he outs this particular effort and measure. And let me be very specific if you didn't catch it in the readings. What it was is that in 1914, the Panama Canal was completed, and the laborers were the Black and African inhabitants of the Caribbean, Central and South America. And what is the title of my book? It's called Booker T. Washington and Africa, The Making of a Pan-Africanist. Do I have a copy here? Yes, I have a copy here. So this is a copy of the book. But you don't have to get the book because I give you 2 critical chapters of the book, and you know, all is well. So that being said, in 1914, the Panama Canal was completed, and the laborers on the Panama Canal were the African and Black inhabitants of the Caribbean, Central, South America. And yes, I'm intentionally saying African because while we can talk about Blackness, Black is how you look. African culture is who you are. And so, you know, and that's Dr. John Henrik Clarke, and I subscribe to that. So it tells us nothing just to say you're Black. It's just like, okay, you're identifiably Black. And these are constructs created in the last 400 or 500 years by Europeans who really aren't in a position to create constructs for anybody, right? As the youngest human beings on this earth. That being said, here we are, right, with systemic racism and these constructs called race that identify you just merely on your physical appearance. And so this is, you know, what characterized the Panama Canal engineering project. The United States initiated it, and basically they initiated it for the purpose of opening up the waterways, okay, this project on the Panama Canal. So now the United States would not have to go around the land masses in order to trade with other parts of the world. And by having that, having the ability to go from the Atlantic Ocean to the Pacific Ocean without going around North America and Canada or going around South America, they will become a superpower. It will propel the United States into position as a superpower because of its ability to trade, right? So this project called the Panama Canal was a big deal. The French had tried it and failed. Now the Americans had tried it under Theodore Roosevelt, and they were successful, but not without the labor of African people from the Caribbean, Central and South America. Okay, and so these are the people that did the hardest work, made the greatest sacrifice, sometimes in the form of their own lives, because there was yellow fever on the canal, meaning that there was an outbreak of yellow fever, which is a very dangerous disease that's carried by mosquitoes. So many died, many Black people died in constructing the Panama Canal. Now, the Black people were not U.S. From the United States. They were not U.S. citizens. They were not the Africans in America who had defeated the institution of slavery. They were Africans from the Caribbean nations, island nations, from Central America, from South America, who were identifiably Black and, by all accounts, in my opinion, very likely to be very culturally African, although not identifying that way. Okay, not then or not now, right? So we don't have a similarity to the U.S. in the sense of we hear people say African, blah blah blah. They say Afro, right? Which implies, you know, a connection to Africa, but that's not openly stated. African, you know, Jamaican, African, Brazilian, African. That's, they say Afro. Anyway, that being said, so we know that there are Black people. So when this canal is completed, after, you know, many years working on it, this completed in November of 1914. Okay. As a result of that, a senator from Missouri, and those of you in the United States that don't know that Missouri is infamous. It is the southern state in the North. Okay. It sits above the Mason-Dixon line that divided northern free states and southern slave states. And don't get me wrong, at a certain point, the United States is full of slavery, but as it expands into the West, right, they cut this deal, right? So there's the Mason-Dixon line, and the states above the Mason-Dixon line are free states that are added to the Union. States below the Mason-Dixon line are slave states. Missouri is above the Mason-Dixon line in the West, and still it is a slave state. It is added to the United States as a slave state. Very important to notice. This is also the Missouri, you know, where George Floyd is murdered and all of that. You can go to the website Booker T. Washington and Africa.com. You can purchase it there, okay? Booker T. Washington and Africa.com. It's all one word. .com. No abbreviation, no hyphenation, right? That being said, okay, so the senator from Missouri named James Reed notices that the Panama Canal has been completed. They're paying attention to this. And he, in his own mind and logic, says, aha, they have the Black inhabitants of the Panama Canal have received American US wages, which was true. They are used to getting such wages for their labor now, which may have been true. And he deduced that the next step would be for them to attempt to immigrate to the United States, which he was in opposition. He was obviously openly racist. And so he proposes a number of pieces of legislation to exclude various groups of people, but then settles on this piece of legislation saying to exclude anyone of the Black or African race from the United States. And he understood that this would cover any and all of the people coming from the Caribbean, Central and South America, or even from the continent of Africa. But we must understand that this was certainly directed at those former laborers on the Panama Canal who were identifiably Black and what I said before, very likely still culturally African in many ways. And I'll speak to some of the direct information in the case. Meaning I'll read a little bit from the case as the debate on the floor of the House takes place. That being said, uh, this piece of legislation passes in the Senate with no debate, no fight, no, real inquiry. And there is an extra caveat to it, which is that it included a clause that would deny Black and African people on the same basis as it would deny criminals and undesirables attempting to enter the country. Okay. And I want to make that very clear because this is something they went on record about. This is something that, was well documented in the congressional record. It is in my book, I Constitute the Case, but it is corroborated by the actual congressional record. And, it is one of the times where they openly, the United States government and its, legislators openly say that we want to deny African and Black people entry, immigration into the United States and put them in the categories as undesirables and criminals entering the country. It passes without debate in the Senate, and then it is scheduled to go to the House of Representatives, which is at the time much larger. That became Booker T. Washington was someone who read the Congressional regularly, and he saw that this measure that was attached to the larger immigration bill of 1915 was due to come before the House of Representatives. Now, this legislation, it is actually an amendment to the larger immigration bill of that year. So it's the immigration bill of 1915, and it is the 19th amendment in this larger immigration bill. For those of you who are, historians or lay historians and you want to go do the work, where you can find this immigration bill. It's part of the larger immigration bill of 1915 coming before the House, proposed and passed in the Senate on December 31st, due to come before the House of Representatives the first week of January from the 1st to the 7th. Now, much to their chagrin, Booker T. Washington would see this piece of legislation due to come to the House, note that it was originated and passed in the Senate, and start to organize. He would utilize something called his Tuskegee machine, a secret network that he used to do power brokering, okay? He wielded an unusual amount of power through this organized effort, meaning various people on this organized machine. It is what Du Bois had a problem with him about, because Washington could silence people. He could wield power through it, approve appointments here, there, everywhere, but also obviously he could defeat racist legislation with it, and did. So that being said, in 1 week, he didn't have to be educated on who was African and who was not, who was Black and who was not. He knew that to say Black and African meant everybody he was concerned about, whether it was on the continent or in the Caribbean, Central or South America. At this time, Tuskegee had become a center for African and Black students from the Caribbean, Central and South America. But he also notably had worked to have a steady stream of students coming from the continent of Africa as early as 1893. He knew that this piece of legislation would stop them from being able to come to Tuskegee and learn. And if you remember, I don't know if I covered it in here, probably not, because much to some people's surprise, the course is not, my book. The course is comprised of many things that constitute our study of Pan-Africanism. However, in the chapter you did read in 18 on Pan-Africanism, right? So the chapter before this on Booker T. Washington, Pan-Africanism, Pan-Africanist, you know that there's a 1912 International Conference on the Negro. So he is interested in having a connection with Africa and having a steady stream of students come from Africa as early as 1893. And he knew that this piece of legislation would not only lock out Black and African inhabitants in the Western Hemisphere, the Americas, but it would also eliminate that steady stream of students coming from the African continent. Washington was involved in believing that there was a sacred mission that was aligned and part of the Tuskegee mission, which was, head, heart, and hand. And that meant that essentially to put what you learned into practice. And the idea was for all domestic and foreign students to take what they learned at Tuskegee back to their respective Black and African communities. And he felt like this would, of course, destroy that effort. So he organizes, if you read the case, you see that he sends his lieutenants of the Tuskegee machine up to Washington, D.C., and he says, pull every string possible to defeat this unfair and racist measure. Okay. And on the floor of the House, as a result of Booker T. Washington propaganding in the Black press publicly, exposing their plans to pass such a racist piece of legislation, his writing about it and publishing about it in the Black press makes its way to the floor of the House through a congressman from New York. And the congressman from New York takes Washington's arguments to the Congress, to other representatives, where they essentially have a ferocious debate about it. This is, really an epic story, because, it's no wonder that it's pretty much been squashed or buried in history, because of the simple fact that you get to see everyone exposed in terms of their views around the presence of African people in the United States. Let me just read directly from it briefly, the book and the case. Hold on one second. Also, I did want to mention one thing. There was a interesting thing that happened, and this is sort of within this story of Pan-Africanism, meaning that this case is an example of solid, concrete Pan-Africanism, meaning that here's Washington organizing to defeat a racist measure where the U.S. plans to lock out anyone of the African and Black race, but also there are alliances that did not previously exist, meaning Du Bois, Monroe Trotter, and others who generally were in conflict in the public realm would now be aligned in the context of this particular case, okay? And Washington and those men are aligned. The difference is they don't have, Trotter or Du Bois did not have a mechanism to have this case defeated in the Congress. So what happens is that, Washington's lieutenants, namely Grimke, some of their names are still not known to this day because this is the secret network that he had. But one of them is Francis Grimke for sure. And because we can see that in the historical record where he's writing to Grimke, he's singing wires to Grimke about what to do once he arrives in DC. But let me just say something notably about his relationship, Booker T. Washington's relationship and this case, relationship with Grimke. Grimke is in the public realm seen as a public critic of Booker T. Washington. Okay, and this is notable because the truth of the matter is that while he seemed to, in the public view, be a critic of Booker T. Washington, the reality is that he was in alliance with Booker T. Washington and a lieutenant in the Tuskegee machine. And I'm saying this because of, yes, the generation that we're in and the generation that you all are a part of. Everybody doesn't need to know everything about what we do as African people in support of each other. right? I'm highlighting this. Okay. So we could do some things behind the scenes that folks don't know are going on. That being said, Grimke is a lieutenant in the Tuskegee Machine. He goes to Washington, D.C., and he and other members of the Tuskegee Machine hold up the Congress, force a polling of the Congress, meaning that they would hold up the Congress and have the Congress polled, meaning every representative would have to say how they intended to vote on this particular piece of legislation. This was very smart of them because what it did now was force them to say where they were on the issue, how they plan to vote, and now members of the Tuskegee Machine can directly go and lobby individuals who plan to vote in favor of this unfair and racist piece of legislation. This is somewhat done out of, not public view, but of course they go behind closed doors, initiate, to have the Senate, not the Senate, the Congress polled. And if you read the case, you'll see there's another version of this book coming out in the near future, and I get more in detail about what actually transpired. But you have enough here in this chapter to see what happened. That being said, there was a favorable vote, okay, on behalf of the defeat of the bill. But let me just give you a little bit here, what was said by a senator, by a congressman from, no, let me stop. It's not a senator. This is said by a senator from Mississippi after James Reed initiated this racist piece of legislation. He said, before voting, a relatively short discussion began on the floor. Senator Williams of Mississippi was the first to argue in favor of the amendment to lock African people out. He stated, we are beginning to receive now some undesirable immigration of the African race from the West Indies. That's noticeable because I want us all to understand some of these national identities that we've taken on. Certainly West Indies is a misnomer, right? That has to do with Columbus, sailing for India and ending up in the Caribbean and then still calling it the Indies or is something similar to India, right? So that's where the West Indies comes from. But the point is that, all these identities that we have acquired as a result of being dispersed in the transatlantic slave trade, particularly here in the West, they are superficial identities. We're talking, in fact, about African people and other people. While we may get caught up with the national identities or ethnic identities that we have acquired as a result of being scattered abroad, no one else is caught up with that when it comes to us, okay? This measure said anyone of the Black or African race, and they could care less about nationality or national identity or even ethnicity in that respect, okay? So whether you're from South America or whether you were from the Caribbean, all you needed to do was be identifiably Black at this moment in time for you to be the target of this piece of legislation, okay? And Washington knew this. This is why he didn't waste his time saying, oh, well, it's only going to impact this group or that group. He was like, no, that's us, African and Black people. That's me. And therefore, I'm going to fight for them. We are beginning to receive now some undesirable immigration of the African race from the West Indies. A great many Jamaican Negroes have been employed upon the Panama Canal. And after the termination of that work, have become accustomed to American wages, which they received down in Panama. A great many more of them began to come to the Gulf ports. Florida and Louisiana have already received a considerable proportion of African immigration from the French and English West Indies. That is to say, immigration of West Indians who are wholly or partly African in race, okay? So these Europeans, Anglo-Americans, are very much astute in terms of who they're talking about. why they're opposing them. Even further, this is who the bill would impact. The bill would seem to prohibit citizens from the republics of Liberia, Cuba, Haiti, and also from Puerto Rico and Santo Domingo from entering the country, thus placing an unnecessary hardship upon these smaller countries, which would not be done, in my opinion, if they were stronger. But he goes, and that's Booker T. Washington writing about this particular case, right? So he is astute in terms of who the targets of this legislation would impact. And of course, his efforts are successful in the Congress. The bill is defeated. And I want to say notably, of all the people that this would cover, meaning that a successful passage of this particular piece of legislation would mean that no Marcus Garvey in the United States the very next year. This was January 1915, had this measure passed. Marcus Garvey, who actually got an invitation from none other than Booker T. Washington to come to the United States in the following year, would not have been able to come and visit. And he was coming to visit none other than Tuskegee, right? So Washington would be the person who would invite Marcus Garvey, would also defeat the very measure and piece of legislation that would have locked Marcus Garvey out. Unfortunately, this case takes place in January of 1915 when it is defeated. Booker T. Washington would die in November of 1915. Okay. That being said, it would allow Marcus Garvey to enter the country, but so many others, right? Our beloved Kwame Nkrumah would come to the United States and become and receive his education here. Others would come. Those of you, I always say this every time I teach this case, those of you who like Obama, his parents, no Obama for you all, because Obama's father would have been locked out from the United States. On and on and on. We can give examples. No Malcolm for us. Okay. Why? Because his mother would hail from the Caribbean, and her parents and her would not have been able to enter the United States. So we would not have had our beloved Malcolm X and so many others who would have entered the United States. Let me be very clear about this case. The standard of Pan-Africanism is not whether or not you get to the United States. The standard of Pan-Africanism is unifying for the purpose of eradicating oppression and exploitation for African people everywhere we are. So where racism rears its head, say the UK says no African or Black people coming into the United States, coming into the UK. What do you have? You have a model here where African people, namely Washington, organized and successfully challenged a piece of racist legislation that would impact every other African in the world and not the Africans within the United States. Meaning, let's be very clear, this piece of legislation would do nothing to the African people in America, Black people in America who had survived and defeated the institution of slavery and advanced the Reconstruction amendments that most people still benefit from to today, right? So naturalization laws, all of this kind of stuff. It would not have impacted anybody within the United States, okay? It was not designed to do so, all right? However, so he could have played, Washington and others could have said, who cares? We're here. Too bad that you're not, right? But that wasn't his posture. He said, this is us. This measure is meant to impact outcomes for African people who would be able to come to my school and other Black schools to get their education and go back to their own communities and improve their communities, okay? And whatever the benefits were, he was not begrudging them of that. This is a very important point, because right now, if those of you who are in the United States, we have a lot of nonsense going on between ADOS, FBA, who's a Pan-Africanist, all of this kind of stuff. And this is a perfect example to show where Washington was saying, yes, I know you will come and benefit. Matter of fact, I want you to come and benefit from our schools. And we are covering all African people in the sense that we understand that this racist type of legislation could rear its head in France. It could rear its head in the UK. It could rear its head in any of these racist little Latin American countries, okay? Because while there's a lot of Black people in certain Latin American countries, the people in power are vehemently racist, okay? And the people in terms of identity are not always in line with Black and African identity. So you could certainly have this kind of racist legislation in any one of these little Latin American countries that still identify with their colonizers, right? Because the people in power are not Black, and the people who suffer most are Black in places like that. So this type of legislation could rear its head anywhere. This case gives us a model through which to organize and challenge it. But the great thing about it is that Booker T. Washington in particular, he didn't have to educate himself and say, hey, who am I? Do I identify with African people? Do I not? If he had to figure that out in that 1 week, that 6-7 days that this case came before the House, it would have passed. He knew already who he was, right? He knew who the rest of the African world were to him and our relationship to each other. And so he fights ferociously, defends and defeats this piece of legislation, okay? And that's the posture we need to assume everywhere we are, okay? One of the reasons we study history, one of the reasons we study cases like this is because it gives us instruction. It gives us prescription. He did a number of things with regard to this case. He exposed it in the press. He organized, okay, with like-minded people. And he used his level and measure of unconstituted power. When it was all over, he was effective, but he said, had he not been effective, he didn't care. He was going to go directly to the racist president of the United States, Woodrow Wilson, and challenge him and demand that he defeat this or veto this piece of legislation had it been passed in the larger immigration bill of 1915. Very important, because Washington, in essence, did what few people thought he was capable of doing. So often the critique of Washington is that he was very aligned with the US and US government and being a Negro American. And the truth of the matter is that this is him challenging US legislations, challenging the US government and their legislators, and opposing them, opposing their willingness to construct racist policy that would be harmful to African people across the globe. We have a right as African people, as the human beings on the earth, to move around this planet freely, free from negation and on every level, okay? And so he understood that even then, and this is what allows him to defeat it, and that the credit, the benefit is to us all, okay? It is a benefit, and we can weigh and measure that, right? I could run down the gamut of people who are able to enter the United States and get something just from the relationships we develop here between Africans from the continent, the diaspora, the Caribbean, Central, South America, all of those places, and how that has been beneficial to the rest of the African world in terms of us fighting against white supremacy and culture and racism, right? And colonialism, and even honestly, all the forms of neocolonialism that have emerged since then. So it is a plus for us. It is a model for us that we can take forward. And just once again, let me be clear, it's not about being in America. It is about not allowing people to advance racist policy that inhibits, that stops, that prevents our free movement around this earth as the parent people on this earth, right? If we take it back to the journey of man, a genetic odyssey, who are we? right? We are the parent people of this earth. We are the progenitors of every group of people on the face of the earth. Nobody has the right to tell us that there's a place that exists that we cannot go. Okay? Nobody. Especially not the youngest people on the earth. Okay? So you know, I'm gonna leave it there because obviously I could go on all day. Very important case. Study it, share it, cite it as evidence of concrete expression of Pan-Africanism that emerged at this period in history. It is a landmark case, really, and it tells us how to struggle against similar situations and scenarios, okay? Let me see what you got to say. I'm over and I'm gonna be out in a few minutes. George Floyd in Minneapolis. Yes, exactly, George Floyd. Dr. Bryant. Oh, okay, I'm sorry. Yes, Minneapolis, Minnesota. You're right, it's not Missouri. All right, Dr. Enjoy your book. Thank you, Chris Manuel. Please be sure to let us know when your next one. Yes, I will. The expanded version is coming soon. I will let you guys know when it's out. It's for the same birth weeks and premiered in the world. Yes, exactly. Well, okay, so 1915, the birth of the nation. So 1915 is not when the birth of the nation was released. 1900 is when Birth of the Nation was released. But there is a connection with the Birth of the Nation in this book. If you guys, you don't have the book, but let me see, you said you did. Okay, good. Chris, Emmanuel, you have the book. You know that there's a chapter in this book called The Tuskegee Model in Africa. I don't share it in the course, but for those of you who have the book, you know that it starts out with a quote. The chapter 3 starts out with a quote about the sustainability of Tuskegee. And the quote is actually from none other than Thomas Dixon, someone who was a serious racist and wrote the book, The Klansman, which is what the film Birth of the Nation was built, written based on, right? So you know how films usually are based on a book, well, or screenplay. Birth of a Nation is based on the book called The Klansman, written by Thomas Dixon. And yes, Thomas Dixon would have something, you know, he had actual vendetta with Booker T. Washington. But yeah, so I'll leave it there. So yes, there is actually, but 1915 is the end of a period, a very serious period, 1895 to 1915, called the Nadir. And it's defined as our lowest point post freedom from slavery, when United States or Anglo-Americans, whites in America, are unleashing unbelievable waves of violence on Black people to stop competition in all areas of life. And so it is a notable period in history, a period that they generally try to deny existed now. 1915, same year, but yes, the 1900 is the release of Birth of the Nation, and it is the second rallying of the Klan after its formation. Yeah. Oh, it was released in 1915. Okay, but it was actually created in 1900, right? Like, so maybe it took it to 15 years to get it to, you know, in the theaters or whatever the case may be, but yes. So it is the second rally cry for the Klan. They're trying to reconstitute themselves. And essentially, you know, one of the ways, which this is a whole another conversation, one of the ways in which they try to do that is to galvanize themselves around protecting white women from Black men, you know. So, you know, there's a whole bunch to be said about that. Okay. Any questions, comments, problems, or issues that anybody have with the case and understanding it or anything like that? No? Okay. All right, folks. Well, thank you so much for dedicating your time. The readings will go up by Monday. So I will be sharing that. I have to see what is, I'll see on the, hold on 1 second. Let me see what our next reading is. Okay, our next readings for this week coming up will be, oh, okay, great. On this syllabus, I actually get right to the African continent and one of our leading theorists in that context, and that is yeah, that's going to be, we'll be reading Women's Liberation and the African Freedom Struggle by Thomas Sankara, excerpts from that. And the revolution cannot triumph with men. Yeah, so we're going to reading about Thomas Sankara. So now we're moving to the African continent. Okay, I'm going to get more into what you see here for this lecture, saying how to qualify anything as Pan-Africanist policy case. So watch this case, the African exclusion measure is an example. But I want to talk a little bit more about the dialectical relationship between those of us here in the Americas and everyone else on the continent and around the world. How we always had this dialectical characteristic to our struggle, meaning this back and forth conversation. And so, as you remember in Kwame Ture's history and history of Pan-Africanism, definition and history of Pan-Africanism, he talked about this mass character of our struggle, how we have a tendency to mobilize in mass against things that we detest or that we are challenging or that we are resisting and struggling against. Now we need to do it in an organized fashion, in a deliberate fashion. And so I'm going to get a little bit more into that in the next lecture about conscious and deliberate dialectical relationships and organizing. And that will, of course, bring us to the African continent. And then I will get into, talking about Thomas Sankara and connecting the fact that in every African community around the world, the women are in mass, okay? And so we must deal with the condition of women, and we must deal with the liberation of African women as part of our struggle, okay? Not a separate issue, but a part of our struggle, period. Okay, that's it. I will see you all next week. I will be sharing the readings by Monday. Sometime I post them earlier. Last week I posted them earlier than Monday, but by Monday evening they should be up. And I'm looking forward to it because I want to hear what you all have to say about African women's contribution to our struggle, the necessity of prioritizing the status and the condition of women on the continent and abroad in light of our struggle, right? And this directly challenges how we internalize white supremacy and culture, patriarchy, colonialism and neocolonialism, okay? So thank you all. Exactly, thank you, Chris Emmanuel. And we'll go out on that note. He says, women are fearless, strong, and intelligent. Most certainly African women are. Exactly. All right, so I am because we are. Have a great weekend. Stay safe, and I'll see you next week. Peace.
Yeah, for the wonderful lecture. And
thank you.
Yes, I would like to thank everyone that attended this Pan-African History Call. Stay safe and happy Easter. I am because we are.